A lot of people have been asking for me to share my story of mom to medium. So what I've decided to do is that I'm going to do it in a couple parts, like chapters or part 1, part 2. And so I'm going to start telling the story right now, and I'm going to leave you hanging for a bit, and then we'll go from there, and we'll keep adding as I have time to record these videos for you. So let's call this part 1. Let's call this, mom to medium. And so I have been sharing my story on stage at what is called Mo Mondays, which is an amazing venue where you can go, anybody can go and tell their story. It's not to promote yourself, it's just to share your story in the hopes that, you might inspire someone, or someone might resonate with your story, feel better. It's just really nice people, and it's awesome. And so I've been doing that for the past couple months, and I've had really good experience. So I know that people have been asking, I want to hear your story, I want to hear your story. And so I'm going to tell you my story, but I'm going to do it in parts. So this is what I've been doing when I go on stage. So basically, my story begins as when I was a younger mom, obviously. And if you don't know much about me, I have 4 children. And when my story begins of how I went from being a mom to a medium, my kids were little. And right now they are big. They are 16, 13, 11, and 8. And I consider that big. So for a long time, it felt like they were really small. And with small children are needy, and small kids need you all the time. Babies need you, toddlers need you, 7-year-olds need you. And as a mom, I had a job too, and my main job was taking care of my kids, so I had to balance between working a job and coming home and then doing all the kids stuff. But when I was staying home with the kids, it was well, you know how it is. If you have small kids, and if you have even big kids, you can kind of remember what it was like to have little kids, right? So my story kind of starts with the having little kids. All the dirty diapers, waking up in the middle of night 500 times, being exhausted out of your mind. You go in, you change the diaper, and then 5 seconds later they fill the diaper. And doing this 4 times, right? 1 time is great, and you do it 4 times, it's even better, but it's exhausting, and you're sleep deprived, and you have baby puke on your shirt. And if you want to go somewhere, you have to find a clean shirt if you're lucky, right? And pack up all the stuff in the diaper bag, and get the babies and get them on their snowsuits and get them, and they're screaming and they're crying, and you might forget one on the driveway in the garage, which is what I actually did. I actually pulled out the driveway and I forgot the baby car seat with the baby in it in the garage as I'm pulling out, and I stopped luckily before I actually made it to the road and went back and put the baby in the car. But just stuff like that, right? And you kind of can lose yourself in that. You can kind of forget that you're an actual person, that you're a human being, that you're a woman. And I know I've talked about this before in a different video, but this is where my story starts. So going through this 4 times, being a mom and suffering from postpartum depression with my 2nd child, moving to a new town, we moved to Orangeville, we didn't know anybody. We had 1 car, right? My husband worked 2 jobs, a full-time job and a part-time job to support us while I stayed home with the children. My 2nd child was very colicky, and by colicky, I mean screaming constantly, projectile vomiting across the room onto the floor as soon as I would be done feeding him. And never sleeping, just screaming, 24/7 screaming. So that in itself is a lot of work. Luckily, my son, who is now 16, was 3 at the time. Luckily, he was very self-sufficient and very independent, and he was easily entertained, and so that was very helpful. While I'm going through all of this, it was in the winter, right? So in the middle of the winter, you kind of think of darkness, right? Like it gets dark early, and we didn't have 2 vehicles, we just had 1 car, and my husband had the car because he needed to go to work. So I found myself in a brand new town with 2 little kids, no family because we moved away from our family for my husband to be there for his job as a firefighter in Brampton. And it seemed like, looking back, it felt like he was always gone and I was always by myself with these 2 kids. So I decided I was going to go out and meet some new people, and so I did that. I went to, drop-in centers and all that good stuff. I would push my kids through 10 feet of snow so I could get out there and just not be in the house by myself all the time. And this is going back a few years before, leading up to the transition that I went through, but I think it's important to share the background of this so it doesn't seem like I'm just, there. So I want to explain the whole part of being a mom, and how for me, it was really hard, you know, and feeling like I was alone. And, you know, hopefully you are watching this and you have a support system and you have friends that are around you. And I did eventually make some friends, which was awesome, who had babies, and we ended up hanging out together, right? And so that was awesome, and things got a little better. I still had postpartum depression, but, you know, I carried on and everything was okay. And after a while, we had another baby. We had moved to a different house and I had another baby, and we had the girl. My girl, I finally got my girl, and everything was pink, right? Got the minivan, everything was amazing. I was happy to have the girl. And then some things happened in our lives, and we ended up losing our house, and just things were kind of not going very well. And I'm being perfectly honest with you so that you know that if things are going shit for you, that you can sort of relate and be like, oh, I'm not the only one who's going through these things, right? Because that's the whole point, is I am on these videos to help you. So that happens, and we have our daughter, and we get our minivan, and we fix things as best that we can, and we move again, and things are going really well. And then I got pregnant with my fourth child. And when I am pregnant, I get really, really sick. I have to go to the doctor. I have to get that diclectin. I have to take more than you're supposed to take just to survive and take care of the kids that I already had, right? Again, my husband's working 2 jobs, always working. It feels like, always feels dark, always feels like it's time for dinner, but it's cold chicken nuggets again. And making dinner, I don't enjoy making dinner, so it was like the basic, you know, just to make my kids survive and at least not be hungry anymore. And that's where I'm gonna leave it right now.